And now with their views on the platforms, we welcome Judith Lipp. She is chair of the Federation of Community Power Cooperatives. Tom Adams, Energy and Environmental Advisor at, funnily enough, Tom Adams Energy. And Paul Acchione, who is the acting CEO with the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. And it's good to have you all back around our table here at TVO. Let's just start. Paul, why don't I go to you first? You've heard the discussion among the party members. What jumped out?
Well, I guess two things. One is that I know I've met all of the candidates. These are honorable people that are well-intentioned. The problem is they're not engineers and they can't do the math.
Meaning what?
It means that if you take a look at our electricity prices in Ontario right now, and you look at who we're competing with in North America, mainly the southern United States, there's a price differential for our manufacturers and industrial partners of about 30 to 50%. If you want to have an impact in levelizing the trading competitive environment for our industry so we can get more jobs in Ontario, you've got to drop electricity prices in Ontario 30 to 50%. Now, it's doable, but there's a couple of things that have to be done that right now politicians see as the third rail, and they won't go anywhere near it.
We will pursue some of those ideas on how to make that happen in just a second. Judith, your observations on what you just heard.
Well, I do agree that I think none of the parties are demonstrating really a comprehensive grasp of energy policy that we need to move forward. I think what we risk is stagnation and arguing around things, looking at the past without recognizing where the future is going. And I think the risk is that we're going to end up with another sort of traffic, congestion issue comparable to what we have in Toronto. So 20 years of squabbling around what we should be doing and nobody actually doing anything. So what I'm really looking for is who's got the best foundation for moving forward, who's actually recognizing what some of those trends are. And I really think there's only, the Liberals have had some time to implement those plans and I think have laid a foundation that can be built on. There's lots to be improved. The other parties, I'm not really hearing that they are understanding the issues. This utopian idea that prices are going to come down is ludicrous. And
well, I think they all acknowledge prices are not going to necessarily go down.
Right, but then the idea that going to nuclear build-out is going to get us to price stabilization or even a reduced price increase, I think is again a utopian notion, and none of the facts bear out that reality.
Okay, we'll follow up on more of that in a second too. Tom.
Well, one thing that jumped out at me was the conversation about conservation. This year, Ontario's power bill is going to be something in the order of $19 billion. Next year, 20. Year after that, $21 billion. Now, we've had electricity consumption has been falling since starting in 2006, 7, 8, and since. As the revenue requirement keeps going up and the units of sales go down, just the way the math works, you get higher rates. So people talking about electricity conservation is going to bring down our rates, which is really deeply into this conversation, just doesn't add up. Energy conservation is not going to bring down our power rates, and that's
but it might bring down our bills. Right? If we use
no,
less,
it doesn't.
It won't even do that.
No, it doesn't do that at all. Because the overall power bill for Ontario going out into the future is fixed. So you divide it by a smaller number of units. Okay, what happens is if you conserve and I don't, then you transfer more of your costs to me.
Yes.
Right? But it's a zero-sum game. And because the amount of money we've got to pay in aggregate is so locked in and for so long out into the future, most of it with 20-year contracts behind it, the whole kind of narrative around conservation has not been really thought out.
Okay. 3 different areas to pursue. Let's go pursue them. 30 to 50% lower prices is what you think we need to be competitive with, say, states in
the southern U.S. where the jobs are going from Ontario.
How could we even begin to do that?
Well, it's relatively straightforward if you look at the engineering. And unfortunately, politicians don't like to talk to engineers very often. I guess we're geeky. But here's the deal. The current grid operates at 63% capacity factor. So if you can convince people through a price mechanism to move some of their consumption into the evening, either by shifting their load or by using thermal or electrical storage at a local level, you can increase the cost effectiveness of the grid by 37%. Now, you can't get it all because when you level it off, you're not going to build up that demand right away. So maybe you can get 20% of your cost increase by utilizing the grid better than we are right now.
What would it take to do that?
Well, you need to provide a price plan that gives a deeper discount at night and a higher price during the day, and not charge full peak price for all the power you use during the day. Only charge extra peak consumption during the day at peak price. The base power that you used at night, you should get during the day at the base price, which in Ontario right now is 5.8 cents. You shouldn't be paying 13 cents for base power during the day. That's nuts. Because it disincentivizes people moving the power to the night. And industry is getting no savings, so they're not shifting production into the evenings.
All right, why don't we do this?
Well, we should, but the problem is touching the price plans in Ontario is considered a third rail in politics. You lose your election if you want to tinker with the price. What the Engineering Society have suggested is we develop such a plan, but we make it voluntary. We let people buy into the plan, they subscribe to the plan, and then the ones that want to invest in this sort of storage technology or load shifting, then they get the benefit, they get their bill reduced. We have a plan that we think we can reduce their bill by half, and they'll make the whole grid operate more efficiently, and then other people will get the benefit from the improvement in the grid operation.
Does this make sense to you?
Well, certainly not off the cuff. I couldn't really comment on the specifics. I would have to understand exactly the mechanisms that are being described. I think the perspective that we bring to this, so I'm representing the Federation of Community Power Co-ops. We work with organizations and citizens that are interested in essentially developing social enterprises, co-ops, if you will, to develop renewable energy projects that will enhance their own their own communities as far as revenue streams. It allows them to invest in a sustainable energy future. So we're looking at the energy policy through that lens.
Do you hear any of the parties talking about that?
They're certainly not talking about it. No, it's a small subset of the whole renewable energy discussion, I would say. I think it's a shame that they're not talking about it. I think community power is something that actually everybody can probably agree to. So enabling citizens to invest in local renewables, so basically a natural resource that resides in their own communities, and to be able to benefit from that, as opposed to having large companies come in and make profits and take those over the borders. I think we're talking about building a resilient economy in Ontario, and community power does that. It addresses the different components, whether it be jobs.
Is there one party out there that sounds like it's simpatico with that?
Well, the Liberals have introduced the Green Energy Act that not only acknowledged, but also created the mechanisms to enable co-ops to form. So we have now, in Ontario, we have 70 cooperatives, renewable energy cooperatives that have formed, that are either have contracts through the feed-in tariff program or have applied.
So for all the bad things we've heard about the Green Energy Act, you like that aspect of it?
Oh, the Green Energy Act is an important pillar for moving towards a renewable energy future, which in my mind is the only energy future we have, because all the other technologies and the resources have inherent environmental problems.
Let me get Tom on that, because the Green Energy Act has been one of the most significant things this Liberal, I always say this Liberal government, meaning over the last 10 years, but anyway. You know what I mean. Yeah.
Look, in the United States, electricity prices for commercial and industrial customers peaked in 2008 and have been falling ever since.
Is that because of the recession, Tom? People use less power when they're out of work.
There are a lot of factors. Part of it's recession. Part of it is low interest rates. Another part of it is the bonanza of inexpensive natural gas. So there are a bunch of things in here, but at the same time as they've been seeing their prices go down, we've been seeing our prices escalate at a rate of about 10% per year. And the big driver there's a lot of factors. Green Energy Act is the main factor. So if we want to get off this price treadmill that's just taking us up, the official forecast is a 42% increase over the next few years. That's the official forecast. It could be better, could be worse.
For what it's worth, the Liberals say that the prices have gone up as much as they have, not because of the Green Energy Act, but because they've had to rebuild the infrastructure of the system, which they say was left fallow for a decade or more.
If you look at what happened to prices from the time the Liberals came in, from 2003 till 2009, prices didn't budge that much. And there was a lot of build and there was a lot of things going on. It wasn't until we got the Green Energy Act that the price really started to take off.
But if all of those renewables that have happened because of the Green Energy Act, which I heard the energy minister say accounts for 5.5% of our power utilization, how can 5.5% of our utilization be responsible for a 200% increase in our energy costs?
Well, we haven't had a 200% increase in energy price. We've had something like a 50% increase, since 2008. So, I mean, and again, it's not one single factor. There are multiple factors in here. But if we look at what's caused prices to rise to this point, and then the forecast that's going out. Keep in mind, electricity is very capital intensive, so it's a slow burn. You make the decision now, and the prices don't arise till later.
Paul, you need to break the tie because we've got one definitely not in favor of the Green Energy Act. We have one very much in favor of it. Where are you?
Well, let me just mention that Tom is making quite an interesting point, and that was the second point I wanted to make with respect to that third rail in politics. The other thing that we've done in Ontario, which is absolutely insane in a business environment, is you take everything that you want to do that doesn't relate to the cost of generating power, and we put it into the power price. We put in stranded debt into the power price that should be written off in a tax account. We put in conservation costs into the power price that should be written off in a tax account. We put in subsidies for solar above the natural price of producing electricity into the power price, and that should be in a tax account. That's what the Americans in a lot of states are doing. There's bad investment decisions like the gas plant. We put it into the electricity price. I mean, we're shooting the manufacturers and industrial partners that are generating all the middle-class jobs in the foot, because they're competing in an open market in a North American environment.
So what do you want to do with the Green Energy Act as a result?
Remove those costs out of the electricity price, put it into the tax base, get the jobs back. That'll generate the tax revenue that then can pay off that debt in the stranded debt account.
Okay, not to be too cute here, but you're saying make the taxpayer pay instead of the ratepayer pay. I mean, it's the same person at the end of the day, isn't it?
Not in the case of businesses, because businesses pay the electricity bill before they ship their product. And they have to build it into the price of their product when they sell out of Canada. But they only pay their tax bill at the end of the year if they've made some money. So if we've generated the jobs and they've made some money, they will pay. But if they're barely breaking even, you won't lose the jobs because we're not bankrupting them.
Judith, you want to come in on that?
Well, I guess it's a curious idea that businesses are not contributing to the overall welfare of the energy system that they're benefiting from. So I mean, again, this is a sort of how you structure things. At the end of the day, you have to pay for the system. I think that's the bottom line, how you structure it, because you want to protect one sector of the economy versus another, whether it's consumers versus manufacturers or small businesses, et cetera. So, I don't think the general public is really that sympathetic to burdening themselves versus, industry or manufacturers, et cetera. So I would say the bottom, for me, the question is there is a price to pay to modernize our energy system. We have underinvested in the system in Ontario for at least 40 years, and we're playing catch up. We are not looking forward as to where the future is going. The trends around the world are very strongly towards a renewable energy future. The price of renewables, solar and wind, have come down 50% over the last 5 years.
We have jumped on that bandwagon, right?
And we've jumped on that bandwagon, but we need to keep going because we're not going to. It's not like we're starting that trend, and now we're getting cold feet because there's a price issue. But I don't agree with the price.
Couple of minutes left. I want to try and put two more things on the table. You heard the previous four people talk about this notion of buying power from Quebec, hydroelectric produced power from Quebec. Really quickly, good idea or bad idea?
It's not going to happen unless you give them the money to build the transmission and increase the capacity of their dams. That's tens of billions of dollars. It'll cost us more to do that with Quebec than to build out Northern Ontario. We might as well go up to Northern Ontario and build our own hydraulic.
Tom?
The Quebec thing, there's potential, but we shouldn't expect it. We got a lot of history in electricity trading with Quebec. We've had hiccups along the way. It's worth exploring, but don't expect it as a magic bullet.
Judith?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wary of it. I think we need to move away from a centralized energy system. That is the trend. Distributed generation is where it has to go. Smart grids, local. You can smart controls. People have more power, just like with their own personal computers. It's the same system. It's the same idea, is that
Okay.
you can manage these things much more cost effectively at a distributed level.
Jumping in, because I got a couple of minutes left, I want to do one more. There was a considerable disagreement from the parties, among the parties, on the issue of whether or not to expend potentially tens of billions of dollars on nuclear rebuild. Good idea? Bad idea? What?
It's the cheapest and zero emission source we have right now. And it would be a shame not to rebuild them and then have to replace them with much higher cost of renewable with storage. Because if you take renewables with natural gas, it's not zero GHG emitting.
So you're in favor?
I'm in favor of it.
Judith?
Strongly opposed. Nuclear isn't the lowest cost, and it certainly is not the most environmentally benign source we have. So I think we are moving into a future that's
No smoke going up the smokestack on nuclear.
well, we've got lots of other issues. So we haven't got a long-term waste storage solution, and the costs, there are all kinds of hidden costs with nuclear power that we don't have with other generation sources. So we need to be honest about the price with nuclear, and if we can have a full price transparency on nuclear, then we can have an honest debate. But in this province, we haven't had that.
Tom?
If you look at what the components are of the generation portion of your power bill today, nuclear looks pretty attractive. And you know, they make a strong argument that they've got their waste thing fully funded. You know, waste disposal, decommissioning, all that. It is reflected in the price, and they've done a lot of studies that say that they've got it in there right. But the question really is, what about the future? Right? So the existing price is not necessarily a good guide to what the future costs will be. The Europeans are trying to build out nuclear right now. They're the kind of leading amongst the Western countries of putting in the new generation of technology. They've had a lot of headaches. The headaches are not gone. If we're going to talk nuclear, we have to talk very seriously.
Alas, that conversation will have to await another day because we're done. Thanks to Judith Lipp from the Federation of Community Power Cooperatives, Tom Adams from Tom Adams Energy, and Paul Accione, the acting CEO of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. Thanks for coming into TVO tonight.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.